About Gyokeres, of course, there has been a little bit of talk about him potentially linking up with a man he knows very well. Of course, that man is Amorim at Manchester United. Given the implications of the potential move to Arsenal for Sesko, what could that mean for the striker?
Look, for United, it depends on the financial investment they want to make, because the player was, first of all, quite keen on the move before the Europa League final. Then Man United didn't qualify for Champions League football, and so Champions League football is an important point for Gyokeres. But from what I'm hearing, the player is still quite open to assessing all the options on the market, so it's not Champions League or nothing. So Man United would have the chance to go and get the player. I'm told there is a gentleman agreement between Gyokeres agents and Sporting to leave the club for something around 65-70 million euros this summer, so a big opportunity. But United are investing already big money. Mateusz Cunha, now there is this negotiation for Bumo, then Bruno is not leaving. Bruno was maybe an opportunity to make some money, but a player like Bruno is absolutely crucial for Man United, untouchable, so he's not leaving. And so let's see how much United can invest, and also how much money they can make with players like Sancho, Rashford, Garnacho. All these players are available on the market, and we have to follow.
Football Terrace, hit the like buttons, make sure you are subscribing. Good morning to each and every single one of you. Sorry, still a little bit asleep. Loads to talk about this morning. Two massive updates from Fabrizio Romano. United fans, Arsenal fans, Chelsea fans getting excited at the prospect of these deals. We're going to talk about them, delve into them in more detail, but I need you to hit the like button first of all. I need you to be subscribing. I need you to get the bell notification turned on. It's a really important thing. And if you don't always get our notifications, one really important thing to join is our notification group chat. And if you've not joined it before, it's just on Telegram. I'm actually going to post it into the live chat during this show and pin it. So if you want to just it's a Telegram group, it's admin based only. So you're not going to get loads of people spamming. No one can see your number or anything like that. I've just pinned it into the live chat. Join that group chat. We put all of our links to our shows in there in case you miss it, because YouTube doesn't always send out the notifications. But lots to talk about on the show today. Williams to Chelsea or Arsenal. Gyokeres to Manchester United as well. And we just saw the opening there of the show. Fabrizio Romano talking about the prospect of Man United going after Victor Gyokeres, and that Gyokeres was very keen on a move to Manchester United before the Europa League final. And of course, what was reported back then is that Manchester United were in a position whereby, I want to make sure I say this in the right way, United were in a position where it was deemed that we would only have an opportunity at Victor Gyokeres if we made it in to Champions League football. And that was fairly well coveted, fairly well documented. And the vast majority of transfer journalists, transfer experts, and the professional football world stated that Manchester United were going to struggle to get Victor Gyokeres if there was no Champions League football. Now, that story is somewhat changing. And as Fabrizio Romano said, and we'll play the clip for you again in a few moments, yes, Gyokeres was keen. He says, however, even without Champions League football, he is still open to assessing all options, and it's not Champions League or nothing. And that is, I wouldn't say it's a U-turn from the player, but it is certainly a U-turn in how, around what's being described in relation to the player's next move. Very similar to Bryan Mbeumo. With Bryan Mbeumo, most people felt as soon as Newcastle, that have been the favourites for many months, landed Champions League football, the second the final whistle went and Spurs were Europa League champions, that Manchester United's chances were done. What is a stumbling block for this potential Gyokeres deal is very simple: money. It's 65 to 70 million euros to get this deal done. Now, let's put that into context of pounds, which is what we deal with here in the UK. Its highest, it's a 59 million pound deal. Now, that in itself isn't overly expensive, and some will say, well, we're paying more, potentially more than that for Mbeumo. We're potentially paying more than that for, we have paid more than that for Cunha. So why wouldn't we pay that for one of the most prolific strikers in the world? Well, this is where the conversation goes away from the bog basic net spend conversation. The agent fee is massive, and the salary that Gyokeres is demanding from all football clubs is also big. Not as big as the 300, 350, 400,000 that has been claimed by some of the media outlets. They are very much capping. They are very much adding and exaggerating the amount of money that he is demanding. It's somewhere in the region of £250,000 a week that the player feel that he deserves. So this is why Man United are having to weigh things up and look at potential sales, because one, the wage bill has to be kept within a certain limit. The likes of Anthony on 200k a week, Rashford 250, Sancho 250, potentially as well Casemiro amongst others. Those players leaving are essential for us landing the likes of Victor Gyokeres, because the one thing the club doesn't want to do, and this is rightfully so as well, is Manchester United don't want to put themselves back into a position whereby we are losing money hand over fist. Even if we're becoming more successful on the pitch, there needs to be checks and balances. Why? Because you need a safety net. You need a safety net in case the deal doesn't work out. You also need to be able to move players on if they don't work. You look at the Onana situation, massive contract for a goalkeeper, 3 years left on his deal. If he wants to dig his heels in and stay, if he wants to turn around and go to Man United, I'm just not leaving. You know, thanks for trying to find me a new club, but I'm not going. No one's going to pay me this salary. It's very hard to move them on. That's why it's important that Man United balance their books and always have a buffer, always have room for where if a big money signing doesn't work, there then is the potential to go, right, well, we can loan him out or he can sit on the bench. There is the room to buy other players. And I can't talk about, I can't even add up the amount of times in the last 4 to 5 years, maybe even longer than that, I've preached and preached and preached about Man United needing better financial management, and it appears we're going down that line. So from a United perspective, there really is a good opportunity here for Victor Gyokeres to come in. A very nice update from, in many people's eyes, the best in the business. But let's take a little listen. If you weren't watching at the beginning of the video, let's take a little listen again to what Fabrizio said on DAZN yesterday about United pursuing Victor Gyokeres. Let's take a little listen.
It's going to be about Gyokeres. Of course, there has been a little bit of talk about him potentially linking up with a man he knows very well. Of course, that man is Amorim at Manchester United. Given the implications of the potential move to Arsenal for Sesko, what could that mean for the striker?
Look, for United, it depends on the financial investment they want to make, because the player was, first of all, quite keen on the move before the Europa League final. Then Man United didn't qualify for Champions League football, and so Champions League football is an important point for Gyokeres. But from what I'm hearing, the player is still quite open to assessing all the options on the market, so it's not Champions League or nothing. So Man United would have the chance to go and get the player. I'm told there is a gentleman agreement between Gyokeres agents and Sporting to leave the club for something around 65-70 million euros this summer, so a big opportunity. But United are investing already big money. Mateusz Cunha, now there is this negotiation for Bruno, then Bruno is not leaving. Bruno was maybe an opportunity to make some money, but a player like Bruno is absolutely crucial for Man United, untouchable, so he is not leaving. And so let's see how much United can invest, and also how much money they can make with players like Sancho, Rashford, Garnacho. All these players are available on the market, and we have to follow the situation.
So yeah, an update there from Fabrizio, very intriguing one. It's sort of, you know, there's bits of work for Manchester United to do, but very encouraging, because the last thing you want to hear from Ornsteins and Fabrizios and Ben Jacobs, Sammy McBells is they're not working on the deal. There's no communication. There's very little chance, or there's no chance. So it really does open up that door. Let's go to some of your comments that have come through here. I want to first of all thank Said here for the super chat. Didn't say anything, but thank you very much for the donation. United need to move on from the times of dipping and skipping across the river. It's unacceptable. Got to learn from what other clubs are doing now. I need you to break that down for me. I don't understand what you're asking for here. I'm a little bit confused. Stu, it says, just want to say, glad I found the Football Terrace. Terry, you're non-biased and real mate. You're a proper football presenter. Big up TFT, onwards and upwards. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Stu. I appreciate that a lot. It's a lovely compliment to receive, and I really, really do appreciate that a lot, my friend. Bone and Chunks here, Chugs, sorry, says money talks. Mbomo wanted a big contract, so he chooses United. Gyokeres is hedging his bets. If a top team with a great squad comes calling, he'll choose them. Clearly, top teams have reservations. I slightly disagree with what you're saying here. So first and foremost, you look at Liverpool. Liverpool don't have a goal scoring issue per se. What they needed first was to sort out the fullbacks. They're pretty much done. They then wanted a spark in that creative midfield area because Szoboszlai is good, but there is a lack of creativity there. There is a lack of output consistency from him. They then may address that striker area. You've got Newcastle that don't need Gyokeres, City that don't need Gyokeres. Chelsea seemingly haven't gone in for him. They want that younger model. He's 27 years of age and his wage demands are above what they're typically willing to pay for outfield players. So again, he's out in relation to that. With Arsenal, they have worked on the deal. They're also working on Sesko at the same time. This is now very well documented. Juve have made inquiries, but it does sound like he wants to play in the Premier League. So the European clubs that have looked at Victor Gyokeres have been told to sit on the back burner because he prefers a move to the Premier League. Where what you're saying holds some truth is, of course, these players want big offers. Why would Brian Mbomo, at 25, 26 years of age, who has been well coveted, well respected, and highly touted for the past 3 seasons, who's consistently got better in the Premier League, who is consistently scoring goals? I think in his time at Brentford, it's around 50% output ratio. In the last couple of seasons, that percentage has risen. Why would he not be asking for 150, 170, 180,000 pound a week? And if other clubs are not in the position to pay it, so some of the other teams that were in for him, like Tottenham and like Nottingham Forest, if they don't have the capacity to pay top players what they want, that isn't just, oh, United offered more money than us. That's the only reason that he went there. This is a nonsense. The reason that Real Madrid are able to, in their history, attract and keep Ronaldos and Benzema's of this world, Luka Modric, etc., is because not only are they an attractive proposition, but they have the money to be able to keep those players at their football club. It's one of the reasons why Brighton end up having to sell. It's one of the reasons why Brentford in this scenario are having to sell. It's why for years there was all this talk, Bone, in the UK. Oh, West Ham would have kept throughout the 90s and noughties. West Ham lost players like Michael Carrick. They lost Frank Lampard, Rio Ferdinand, amongst many others. And what was always said is, oh, if West Ham could have kept those players, imagine the team they would have. Yes, but the reason West Ham couldn't keep them wasn't just because bigger clubs historically were trying to buy them. The reason was because West Ham didn't have the income because they weren't big enough to justify the wages of all those players. They could never afford to do it. Wages are a much bigger outgoing and a much bigger commitment than the cost of players. If you actually look, for instance, I saw something today, someone tagged me in it. I can find it. And it's really important to know this and remember it. So let me find it now. So when people go, it's all about salary, there is an element of truth to that. But that element of truth is more to do with players getting paid what they want. And when you reach a certain level as a footballer, when you reach a certain level of status, there's only a handful of clubs in the world that can afford you. Can't quite find the report. I think it was from the Swiss Ramble, actually. So let me just get this up, because I think it's a really important component to these conversations. Is it the Swiss Ramble? It was something Ramble I saw it on. And now I can't find it. If I can't find it, I can't find it. I'll have to try and look for it a little bit later. Bear with me a second, people. Because I really want to find this, because it's an important thing to it's an important part of this conversation, in my humble opinion. And I know somebody replied to it. But it shows the breakdown of how much salary is spent by clubs. And when you look at it, it's all the big clubs in the world spend the salary. But there we go. I'll find it during the show. I should have. Oh, no, I have found it. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. It is. So it's a breakdown. It's not on the Swiss Ramble. It's the Swedish Rumble, it's called. So it shows player wages over the 23-24 season, and then Man United now. You know, you've got Arsenal paying more than Man United in salary. In fact, Tottenham actually are right now. Juve are paying more. Liverpool are paying more. Bayern are paying more. Barca are paying more. City are paying more. You then go to the Real Madrids of this world. Real Madrid pay around about £4.5 million a year in player salaries. PSG is spending over 500 million a year. So when people go, United have only got players because they paid them the high wages, the only reason PSG have their squad, the only reason Madrid have their squad, the only reason City have their squad, the only reason Barca have their squad, the only reason Bayern Munich have their squad, by the way, Liverpool, the second highest English club on there, the only reason Liverpool have their squad is because of the wages they pay. It's as simple and as straightforward as that. Man United fans, don't allow yourself to be gaslit into this notion that you're only getting good players because you pay money. The only reason good players go and stay at all the big clubs is partly because of the money. Let's just have it. Otherwise, there would be, you would often say, oh, bloody hell, I can't believe Bournemouth have got a higher wage bill than PSG. Well, why would that happen? No, it's as simple and it's as straightforward as that. Let's do some more of your comments that have come through here. We have a super chat that says, Rangers fan, not sold on Gyokeres. Look at the previous Portugal Golden Boot winners and take into account his penalty tally when comparing the stats. Again, his tally is a lot higher. He's got a lot of non-penalty goals. He's scoring internationally. He's scoring in the Champions League. He was scoring very well in the Championship in the UK also. Plus, penalties are goals. The fact that he converts a lot of his penalties is not a negative. And look, if he comes to United, Mbomo's a great penalty taker too. Bruno Fernandes is. Listen, having 3 penalty takers of that level in my squad, what do you get? A couple of penalty shootouts a year sometimes with the football team. And Man United, by the way, we've gone out of a number of competitions in the last few years because of and lost. We have lost Europa League finals. We've gone out of the FA Cup. We've lost League Cup games, all because of penalty shootouts. You add players in of that level at penalties, it's another string to your bow. For me, Cardi, not a problem whatsoever. But I do get your reservations. We're going to come back to some more chat on this a little bit later. Moving on slightly to the Arsenal and Chelsea section of this show, I want to play what Fabrizio Romano said. I think it's very, very important to hear this because this could be a massive deal this summer. Let's take a little listen.
It's quite an expensive package for a wonderful player like Nico. What I can tell you is that he's #1 target in England for Chelsea and for Arsenal. They are prepared to do something crazy in terms of financials to get the deal done for Nico, but at the moment they still don't have a green light from the player. So let's see what Nico decides. But at the moment, Athletic fans can stay calm.
Did you guys hear that? Okay, actually cut out for me. Let me guys know if you heard it. If not, we will play it again. But the #1 target, according to Fabrizio Romano, for both Chelsea and for Arsenal. Now, what's so interesting about this is the fact that there's been a few reports stating in the last few days that Rodrigo is Arsenal's #1 target. So it's a contradiction to other reports. I'm very aware of that. But of course, I'm not claiming to be the source. I'm here as a football fan, aggregating the news and getting your views and your opinions. Chelsea also massively interested in him, both to play on the left-hand side of their attack, both, as he said, willing to make a crazy financial offer for the player. And what I find really interesting is there's a lot of people that don't like Nico Williams. There's a lot of people that don't rate Nico Williams. And every time granted, I don't watch him week in, week out in La Liga. Barring when he played Man United, though, the league games I've watched him in, the international games that I've watched him in, there's always been a high level of performance. There's always been a high level of danger. That's the word I would use around Nico Williams when I watch him, is danger. He's a player that he may not always be getting goals. He may not always be getting assists, but it's that potency, that danger, that impact that he has on games that I understand why loads of clubs are looking at him. Now, he has a buyout clause, and this is the crazy part. His buyout clause, again, is cheap. You're talking £49 million to potentially buy him. That in itself is an absolute steal. You can't get away from that. It is an absolute steal for a player of his quality and a player of his potential. Okay? Absolute steal. The stumbling point and the hard element of this deal is the wages. The wage demands are massive. You're talking anywhere between 200 to 300,000 pound a week when you read multiple reports about this potential deal. Williams wants to be paid big money. Now, Athletic Bilbao are willing to increase his salary again. He's already, if you actually go and take a look here on Bilbao's salary, he's already on very, very good money, I believe. I mean, the average wage at Bilbao is quite low. You're talking, it averages around 40 to 50,000 pound a week. But both the Williams brothers are on over 200,000 pound a week, over 200,000 euros a week already, and there is the potential for that to now raise. So Bilbao want to keep them. They both love. And listen, when it comes to Nico, he loves that football club. He loves that part of Spain. He's fully dedicated. He's been fully dedicated to that region, to that football club. And he's not 100% sold on going, in the sense of he's attracted to moves away. He likes the prospect of playing in the Premier League. He likes the prospect of maybe being another Spanish club, another big Spanish club. But at the same time, there isn't this sort of, I have to leave. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't feel fulfilled as it would be. So he's a hard player to get away. The cost is going to be massive on a salary point of view. And that's where the stumbling block comes in. Chelsea, though, according to Fabrizio, along with Arsenal, are willing to make a massive offer. And Chelsea are going to have to break their wage structure to land Nico Williams. And that's the interesting point when it comes to, if this becomes a dogfight between Chelsea and Arsenal, the wage structure, so I'm just bookmarking all of these, becomes a very interesting and a very important component to focus on and talk about. It really, really does. Because Chelsea currently, when you go through if you go through Chelsea's salary, so let's get this up now on the screen. If you go through Chelsea's salary, you do have some players on big money. You do, but a lot of that is legacy based. Okay, so Reece James was on that big money before the new owners arrived, or he may have it was 2022 he signed the new deal, so maybe just as they were arriving, but negotiations I think may have already begun. There was a little bit of crossover. Raheem Sterling, that was part of their mistakes in those first purchases. Wesley Fofana, part of the first wave of recruitment, if you remember that, under Clear Lake, where they were sort of spending really big money on players and they were slightly older, or they were just throwing big money at them, which is fine to do, by the way, but they changed. If you go 6 months, 8 to 12 months in, they changed and they tried to get a lot of younger players. They were capping the wages at the 150 marks. You obviously got Nkunku, who kind of breaks that mold slightly on 195. Enzo Fernandez on 180. You got Cucurella on 175, who came in that first summer. Pedro Neto, 160. So with Chelsea, Caicedo, 150. So this idea they pay nobody over 150,000 a week is a little bit of a myth. It is untrue, essentially. That isn't the case. They definitely do pay players above that. However, barring Reece James, Sterling, they're going to look to move on. Fofana, they'll probably look to move on. And Nkunku has been a flop. Enzo's the next, out of players they've signed, is the highest paid player at the club that Clear Lake have signed, that they want to remain at the club, and he's on 180. If Nico Williams is wanting 250s to 300, it is a massive step up. Now, this is where, when it comes to the battle between Chelsea and Arsenal, I'm excited about it as an outsider watching. I know they're on long contracts, but it's going to be the reaction of that dressing room for Chelsea if they go, right, Nico, there's 280 a week, because Enzo Fernandez is going to knock. Caicedo is going to knock. Palmer on 130, and look at the names here, is going to knock on that door. There's no doubt about it. He will be knocking on that door and talking about an improved deal. I even think you'll find that the likes of Cucurella knocking on the door and saying, well, maybe I deserve something a little bit more. And then it's the people on the lower amounts of money. So Lavia probably doesn't have a leg to stand on yet because he hasn't played enough games, but he's on 45k a week. He might want more. You start going down that list of players that are doing well, but maybe not on the highest amounts of money. Are they all going to start looking for a little bit more cash, a little bit more income? And it's whether or not Chelsea are willing to do that. Now they may very well be, because their financial position is much improved. Their financial position has grown because of the World Club Cup, because of the Champions League. Chelsea can certainly afford it. It's whether or not they want to go to that stage at this point. So there's going to be a really interesting balance. When it comes to Arsenal, they can afford it. They can afford it. They've got players already earning similar amounts of money, like Kai Havertz. They've got Gabriel Jesus on huge amounts of money. There is no excuse, in my personal opinion, for Arsenal to not match the salary. You know, if he picks Chelsea over them, and I'm not going to buy into this notion that Arsenal just weren't prepared to pay him the right salary. They're going to offer him a good salary. But Kai Havertz in there on 280 a week, Jesus on 265 as an example, Rice on 240, Partey 200, Odegaard 240, Bukayo Saka 195, Saliba 190. Arsenal are paying out big wages. If you want to get Nico Williams, there's no way you can say. I mean, Martinelli himself's on 180. Okay, so you can't be saying to Nico Williams you're replacing Martinelli, and you're not willing to pay him more because you're replacing him because he's better. So it's going to be a really interesting fight and a really interesting battle between those two clubs for that player, and I am very much looking forward to it. But as ever, I want to get your views. I want to get your opinions on this right now. I want to shout out, by the way, everybody that has signed up to our brand new membership packages that we've put out. The support you guys give the Terrace is just amazing. So a big thank you to each and every single one of you. I really do mean that. If you do want to join, you can become a TFT member. You can become I just want to go through, because we changed them all yesterday and my brain's now gone. I had such a bad cold. My memory's gone. It's been worrying me, actually. But there we go. These are the levels that we now have. You have TFT member, you have first team player, and you have a TFT legend membership. And there's all types of perks within that in terms of loyalty badges, special emojis you can use right now in the live chat. We're doing member-only live streams at the end of the majority of our live content, especially the match reactions next year. You get photos and updates from behind the scenes, early access to videos. We have a Telegram group chat that we can invite you to. We have the WhatsApp group that I'm in where we can communicate. And there's multiple things coming, plus priority responses on comments, member-only live streams on their way soon as well. So for everyone who's signed up to support us, thank you. To everyone who's going to, a big appreciation as well. We've also gifted about 30 to 40 memberships out to our viewers in the past few weeks as well. So a big shout out to all of you. Super chats here. First one from Patrick says, Trent running down his contract, players choosing Saudi, Cunha and Bomo picking United with no Champions League football, and Zubimendi accepting and then turning down Liverpool. Feels like players are controlling transfers like never before. I think players have always controlled. It's a really good super chat. I think players have always controlled transfers to a large degree. However, I think what's changed now and what is a little bit different is the fact that the clubs went for a period where they were doing these big deals, and especially in England, there was no buyout clauses. I think I'd call it the Harry Kane rule if I was going to rebrand it as this. And Harry Kane kept on signing those contracts, and then when things didn't go the way he wanted at Tottenham, he was stuck. It was hard for him to move on because the price that Levy was charging, maybe because of the COVID and no fans for a couple of years, suddenly teams couldn't afford it. So the player was stuck. And we've seen this with a number of players that were priced out of moves that they wanted. They had long contracts. The asking price was too high. The sellers were being greedy. And I think the players then look back and they went, right, I'm rich, but I never maybe really fulfilled my dreams fully or early enough. So now what a lot of players are doing is getting buyout clauses or agreements like Gyokeres, like Cunha. You've got players now that they may sign massive deals, long deals, like at Chelsea, but they're not on extortionate amounts of money. So it is easier to find new clubs. Some players now, like Trent, are just deciding to not sign new deals because their club may price them out of a move when they want it later on down the line. But the players have always had control because, typically speaking, you can have an 8-year contract at Chelsea on 200 grand a week. But once a player's head's turned and they don't want to be there anymore, clubs will still typically sell because they just won't want the distraction. They don't want a player that isn't dedicated to the cause. So they've always had that control to a large degree. This here from Joe. He says, pretty sure all Chelsea players' salaries will increase due to qualification for the Champions League. incentive-based structure. That's a really good shout, to be fair. And I do remember some Chelsea fans coming on the terrace and explaining that. It's also the exact reason why people panicking about Manchester United's situation. For instance, this season, our wage bill was as low as Tottenham's. You got this massive black hole because of no Champions League. No, because it's going to reduce again. A lot of players' salaries are now going to reduce again by a further 25% because we're not in the Champions League. So our wage bill was below 200 million last year. It's going to get lower because of players leaving, and then the reductions. For instance, Onana at Manchester United is earning. Let's just have a look at his wage structure. And this is why sometimes it's important to not read the headlines, and it's important to read the body of work. So Onana currently earns at Manchester United a whopping 120,000 pound a week, but he now is about to lose. He is now about to lose 30,000 pound of that, so he's going to drop to 90,000 pound a week. Now, just to put that, that's going across multiple players. So for him, that deal is saving us 1.5 million pound a year of outgoings that we're no longer going to have to pay. If you then multiply that, say, across 15 players in this squad, you're saving 23 million pound. So everyone, oh, you're losing 20 million a year in match day revenue. Well, it costs 15 million pound a year to put on those matches, or, you know, that's the high end, 12 million, the conservative end, right, of that, the generous end. But then you're saving 23 million in player wages. So it actually gives you more money to invest at this point, but nobody wants to have those conversations. So yeah, from Chelsea's perspective, it might be to this super chat, it may be an easier situation to resolve, because what's now happening is that more players' salaries are going up. So therefore, if a player like Nico Williams comes in on 275, but you've had 25% wage increases for instance, let's go through these numbers here at Chelsea, just so we can kind of be accurate with it. Let's just say, for instance, the players we named get that 25%. We'll use 25% because it's what Man United's deduction is. So if Palmer gets a 25% increase, that puts him onto 162,000 pound a week. You got Enzo as the example I was given on 180. You add 25% to him, he goes to 225. So suddenly you're in this scenario where maybe the players for at least a season or two don't turn around and say, I want an increase now. So yeah, that's a very, very good super chat and a great point to make on this subject. So thank you very much for that indeed. Don't forget to like the stream. Absolutely, Will Z. Thank you for telling everybody to get that like button hit, telling everybody to get subscribed as well. 120k for Onana to concede 83 goals and debut this season and finishing 15th trophy list and second. Well, he won a trophy first season, but I heard Mark Goldbridge say this earlier on today, and he's so spot on. He's so accurate in what he said that he feels a bit sorry for the Onana situation at the club. Like, he feels a bit sorry for the club and the player, I suppose, in turn, because there's no one left in an official capacity at Man United who signed him. The recruitment team, the sort of the board, as it were, the manager, everybody that's advocated for Onana is no longer there. So you're left in this position, and it's called a legacy issue. And I saw this when I joined. I know it bores a lot of people, but I've got to tell you, when I joined the banking world, I joined about 6 to 9 months before the big financial crash in 2008. And when that crash happened, my mind was blown, because customers were screaming things at me in the branches. By the way, the branches didn't really do anything wrong, as in like the everyday staff, if anything. And I was sitting there going, my mind is killing me. And I remember as a younger man taking it really personally, like, well, I wasn't doing all these things. Why are you having to go at me? Firstly, you realize you're the face of an organization, so you can't help it. But secondly, and the language that was used internally was, what are we going to do about fixing these legacy issues? And there was hundreds of legacy issues, from the charges on direct debits failing, the PPI scandals that were at branch level, to everything that went on with the mortgages and the collapse of the financial world. There's all these legacy issues that needed to be resolved, but you still had to get on with day-to-day business. So maybe that's why I'm sympathetic to the new regime, because on a different level, of course, and in a different world, but I personally have suffered scrutiny for mistakes and misdealings that I didn't personally do, but you still have to face them up day to day. So yeah, look, the Onana situation is crazy, and you know it's one of many mistakes that this club has made. There's no doubt about it. Not true, Terry. You weren't in the Champions League last season, so do you know what? I have misspoke, Sam. It's a very good challenge. You've absolutely caught me out there. There's a European deduction. That is what the article said in relation to Onana and other players. It's like a no Europe reduction. So you are right to call me out. I've misspoken. It's not about Champions League football. It was about no Europe is what the article referred to. So thank you for calling me out on that. Terry, how do we know a player's true intentions? You can never completely know. You can never completely know. People wrote off our owners, but I genuinely think they are learning from their mistakes. You know, it's really funny, JL. Like, I've criticized your owners at times, and I stand by some of the criticisms for, you know, bad signings. I still, again, hindsight's lucrative, but I still think sacking Tuchel the way they did was wrong. I think they changed too much the hierarchy straight away. And that first summer, they spent a lot of money that was wasted, and it was rightfully called out. However, the one thing I've always believed is that Chelsea needed to change. The Roman way wasn't working anymore. And yes, some people go, but they won a Champions League. They did, but they were not competing for the league title. And that's the bread and butter of an English club, challenging for your league title. And Chelsea haven't been in a title race since 2017. There was a 5-year period of no title races and regression. There was still a very good squad, and it won a Champions League on its way down. But it was almost if you compare it to a boxer, like a deteriorating heavyweight who wins a world title with a haymaker of a punch. You know, and Chelsea fans rightfully celebrated it. But the amount of Chelsea supporters that I know that came on the show that all told me, we love it, Terry, but it is papering over cracks. And I stand shoulder to shoulder with their opinion. What Clear Lake did is that first year set them back. And then when they started their second year of planning, and they went for this young model, long contracts, lower salaries, but all these young kids, because of the first mistake, goodwill had been eroded with some people. Then their league position started to regress, or they weren't progressing in the right way, and it was seen as an absolute mess. And there were certainly question marks over the appointment of Potter, and then bringing in Lampard, and then there was the Poch appointment, which again I didn't agree. I don't think I agree with the Poch appointment. If I'm misspeaking, then correct me, because I'm not a big fan of Poch. I always feel that he's never the guy to get you over the line. I just don't think he's as good a manager as people make out. What I did think he would do, though, is get you playing better football, but it didn't work. So these mistakes were rightfully called out. But just because you're making mistakes in the execution, it doesn't mean that the plan is wrong. Because if you give me the ingredients and the cooking details of how to make a roast beef joint the way Gordon Ramsay does, if I mess it up, doesn't mean the instructions are wrong. It means I've made a mistake. You buy a flat pack from IKEA to build beds. If you don't follow the instructions properly, that doesn't make the instructions wrong. So I think they made mistakes and they made bad appointments, but I still think when we're starting to see the fruits of that labor now from Chelsea really bear its fruit. It just took time because you were rewriting the script. You were tearing something apart that was already starting to fail. And the reason it was starting to fail was because the landscape of football had changed. And those first 10 years of Roman versus the second 10 years, you look at the difference in the amount of trophies won, the amount of title races you were in, there was a stark difference. And that's because FFP came in and other clubs became as rich because of the new TV money. So you have to change your methodology. And Chelsea have done that. And this summer and this season is going to be really, really interesting to watch. It really, really is. It's going to be very, very interesting indeed. Todd Bowley tried to make Chelsea the LA Dodgers when he was the interim director of football. He went for the shiny toys that were broken down in Sterling, Aubameyang, and Koulibaly and set us back. I hear you on that. Terry, can you get Matisse on your show in the near future? I can ask Matisse. I could drop him a text message and see if he is up for it. Everyone's saying I don't know what you mean by that. Fairs, Terry, makes sense. Yeah, look. Yeah, okay, about the contract thing. There we go. Breaking news. Ooh. Breaking news. Arsenal are considering a move for Mohamed Kudus. Newcastle and Chelsea are also interested. Kudus could stay in Europe, wants to stay in Europe, preferably the Premier League. Now, the ex-West Ham employee is very, very well connected indeed. Very well connected, knows his football, and wouldn't lie. That could be a fantastic piece of business for Arsenal if they were able to get it done. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because Arsenal now seemingly have entered that race. Now, whether that's another player they're looking at, like Sane, who is a second choice to Nico Williams or Rodrigo. But I think it really does show the way Berta operates. And it's been well documented that Andre Berta likes to cast the net far and wide, goes, right, there are 4, there are 5 targets that we would be happy with to improve our squad within said position. Let's start talking to intermediaries. Let's start talking to the players. Let's start having brief conversations with clubs. And I think it's a decent approach, because what it will mean is that if you do miss out on a player, if Rodrigo tomorrow says, you know what, I'm 100% staying. If Nico Williams says, actually, I can't leave the mountains, I want to stay. I can't leave Bilbao, I want to stay in my hometown. Then Arsenal have got other deals that they are well versed with. They understand the demands. They've started building inroads and they can act on them. What you don't want to do is be working on one deal at a time, solely that deal, it fall through, and then you're left there with your dick in your hand. So I think it is the right, I think it is, it's not the only approach, but it is a very good approach. And yeah, that again, I like Mohamed Kudus. I don't want to see him go to Chelsea. I don't want to see him go to Arsenal. I don't want to see him go to Newcastle if he does leave West Ham. I think he's a fantastic player. He really, really is. He's someone I would have liked at United. The fact that we're going to get Mbomo, I'm kind of relaxed about it. But yeah, very, very good. Very, very good indeed. Arsenal are a pain in the arse for Chelsea. Kudus and Nico Williams, both wanted by Arsenal. Fair enough. I don't think any Chelsea fan, though, and I say this with all due respect to both clubs, I don't think any Chelsea fan is going to sit there and be like, oh no, Arsenal are after one of our players. The track record Chelsea have at beating rivals to a player is unbelievable. Is unbelievable. And by the way, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, for becoming an official TFT member. I appreciate that greatly. Absolutely amazing that you would support us in that way. So a big, big thank you to you, buddy. I really do appreciate that. I do. Let's do some more of your comments here. Kudus only wants to go to Chelsea. He's publicly stated that. Where has he said that? Where has he had a press conference and said that, my friend? I haven't seen it anywhere. Seb here says, Chelsea also stripped the club down to the bare bones. We cleared out all the personnel from the Roman era, including the groundskeeper, medical staff, and youth development. It was massive. And yeah, sometimes these things also need to happen for good reason. And often you sometimes can't see the rationale for all of this pernickety nature until you get further down the line. I watched a documentary not long ago about the major fast food restaurants, and not about what they become, but how they were founded and how the owners and the way they were sort of the attention to detail, the level of efficiency, the speed that the owners were making staff work. A lot of people were joining them and leaving quickly, basically saying, oh, I wanted a job working in a restaurant because it's meant to be kind of slow paced and easy and a little bit of pay. But then there was individuals that went, you know what, I'm gonna see how this goes, because they really want to make this massive. They really want to make this, and then suddenly there was people that started off as simple burger flippers and sort of packers and servers who ended up growing with the business and the organization. The reason why I bring this up as an example is there are times where in the early stages, you might see cutbacks, you might see a new process brought in that's more. This happens a lot. When I hear a lot of staff are really unmotivated because the new owners upset everybody. When you start diving deeper into what the new owners are asking, it's just for people to stop taking. I had this in a business I worked in as a consultant. Staff were unhappy because we were trying to make them stop taking 2.5-hour lunches, stop taking 3 or 4 25-minute coffee breaks a day. So when we implemented a stricter regime that meant they had to do their work for 7 hours, they were like, our morale's bad. And I remember saying to the owners of that company at the time the people that run that department who fed into the board was, don't back down on this because they're saying they're unhappy. You cannot feel morally bad about making people work the hours you're paying them for. The reason why I give these examples is this. Sometimes in life, you can't see the wood for the trees. Sometimes you think it's a terrible job that new ownership's doing because everyone's unhappy, people are being made redundant. There hasn't been this instant impact and improvement in the side. But progression isn't always linear. And it's important to remember that. Doesn't mean you can't criticize, but I think we are all so too quick. And I've done this myself, and I've been guilty of this myself. We're sometimes all too quick to judge a situation without giving it a little bit of time. Thank you here as well to Nilsson, who has become an official member of the Football Terrace as well. You absolute legend. Big up yourself, by the way, here, Stretford Post. Hope you're well, my friend, and having a good day. Afternoon, Terry. He says, afternoon, Terry. Hope the chat is having a good weekend. I'm having a good weekend, and I hope you are as well. It's only just started as well. Got to take the kids swimming soon and everything else. JL here says, Kudus could be a smart move depending on the price tag. Prem proven. A move similar to Neto signing. Not sure he's Champions League quality, though, if that's the direction we want to go in. Or head to, sorry. I think he is Champions League quality. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's an absolute phenomenal player and will serve you very, very, very well indeed. If anybody wants to phone in and have their say, we're going to share the link for that now in the live comment section. So if you want to phone in, I've shared that now. If you guys want to come and have your say, want to give any opinions, be very happy to hear from you all this morning. An update, though, before we do that, in case you have only just arrived, on the two big stories that we're talking about today. The first, and we'll play the clip for you again, is Fabrizio Romano talking about Manchester United and our possibility of signing Victor Gyokeres. Let's take a little listen again.
It's going to be about Gyokeres. Of course, there has been a little bit of talk about him potentially linking up with a man he knows very well. Of course, that man is Amorim at Manchester United. Given the implications of the potential move to Arsenal for Sesko, what could that mean for the striker?
Look, for United, it depends on the financial investment they want to make, because the player was, first of all, quite keen on the move before the Europa League final. Then Man United didn't qualify for Champions League football, and so Champions League football is an important point for Gyokeres. But from what I'm hearing, the player is still quite open to assessing all the options on the market, so it's not Champions League or nothing. So Man United would have the chance to go and get the player. I'm told there is a gentleman agreement between Gyokeres agents and Sporting to leave the club for something around 65-70 million euros this summer, so a big opportunity. But United are investing already big money. Mateusz Cunha, now there is this negotiation for Bruno, then Bruno is not leaving. Bruno was maybe an opportunity to make some money, but a player like Bruno is absolutely crucial for Man United, untouchable, so he's not leaving. And so let's see how much United can invest and also how much money they can make with players like Sancho, Rashford, Garnacho. All these players are available on the market, and we have to follow the situation.
That's the update there regarding Gyokeres, and this is what he also said about Nico Williams to either Chelsea or Arsenal. Massive update on this. Take a little listen.
It's quite an expensive package for a wonderful player like Nico. What I can tell you is that he's #1 target in England for Chelsea and for Arsenal. They are prepared to do something crazy in terms of financials to get the deal done for Nico, but at the moment they still don't have a green light from the player. So let's see what Nico decides. But at the moment, Athletic fans can stay calm.
There we go. We're going to be taking some calls now. First on the show, we're talking to Kenny. Kenny is a Man United fan. Kenny, welcome to the Terrace. What do you want to say, mate?
What's up, mate? Can you hear me, yeah?
Perfect, mate. What do you want to say?
No, I just hear what you're saying. Like I said, I've been watching a long time, and like what you're saying. I think your knowledge on football is really good, to be honest.
Cheers,
like I said,
mate.
with the Kudus one in it, I think with if they extend Partey's contract, I think him in that number 8 would. I don't know. I think it rectifies Arsenal to a different level, to be honest.
Yeah, you think
With,
that's where he
the,
might
with,
place
with the Williams one, I think
Yeah, go on.
250. I think he's on 250k a week. Is there something like that? Bilbao.
I think he's on. It's a 200.
Yeah. So, like I
to
said,
yeah.
I think that 200 wage. Like I said, if Arsenal want him, like I said, me personally, I don't rate him like people do. That's me personally. But like I said, but for Arsenal, for that left wing, I think he's better than my Martinelli by miles. I do. I think his output, the way he takes on players, and obviously, I just think Martinelli since about 2-3 years ago, I think he's not been the same player, to be honest, at all.
I hear you. What's your thoughts on what Fabrizio has said about United and our potential pursuit of Gyokeres?
Yeah, the thing with me, yeah, I was before we lost to Spurs in the Europa League final. I was all for Gyokeres. I've watched Sporting for about 3 years. Even when Amrin was there, I like Amrin a lot. But with Gyokeres, with me, like I said, after that European final, I was like, oh, like this could be a downfall. Like no Champions League, no money. Where's the money coming from? But like I said, even if we don't get Gyokeres, the Mbemo and the Cunha deals for me are top level signings for me. I think the way the obviously Cunha can play the number 9 role as well. I think the versatility with them two, like I said, for me, if you don't get Gyokeres, I'll take Mateta all day as well.
I hear you on that, mate. Kenny, great call, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it, mate. Bye.
Oh, man. Thank you. Next on the show, we've got Mans. What you saying, bro?
Hi, how are you?
Very good.
A lot to say really on the current predicament of things regarding Arsenal and Man United, actually, because obviously in the beginning we all thought Gyokeres was coming to Arsenal. The whole news was around him, and I think something must have happened somewhere in between there, financially probably. And now it's looking like Gyokeres might be joining Man United, even though there will be no Champions League football. But that doesn't seem to be in your way in any kind of way, in any kind of shape. So far, having the best window.
Yeah, we have a good one so far. Obviously, big story today that Arsenal could make a crazy offer to bring in someone like Nico Williams. Are you excited about that? Worried? Concerned? Like, how do you see Nico Williams potentially fitting in at your club?
I don't know what to think of it, because I rate him higher than most people, because the message I'm getting from other fans is, oh, he's a bit overrated, he's a bit rusty. But every time I watch him play for Bilbao, he looks all right. Not too bad, actually, but he does outstand amongst the rest. I wouldn't mind him, but I've always been the kind of fan that thinks Premier League proven, and that's why I rate what Man United are kind of doing right now, bringing in Cunha, bringing in Mbeumo. If you've got players that you can sign for the same amount of money, or even slightly less, that have already proven themselves in this league, even though I'm not a massive, let's say, Mohamed Kudus fan, but he's proven it here, hasn't he? He's proven it in this league. So I was always the advocate of that kind of transfer, but I don't mind Williams. That my problem is with Sesko, not with Williams. But that's a whole other story.
I understand that. And who do you think you're going to end up with striker-wise? What's your gut saying now?
Benjamin Sesko. Yeah, I think that's almost as good as done. Obviously, it's looking like. What I think happened is, I have this train of thought that Arsenal always look for the cheaper option. And what I mean by that is, I know publicly Sesko probably costs more than Gyokeres, which is what it's looking like. They want something like 80 million for him, whereas Gyokeres, Sporting are willing to let him go for a bit cheaper. But I think there's a lot of things behind the scenes where it's how much money is going to be paid up front. And the second Arsenal board or the Arsenal hierarchy see that something is more expensive now, I think they pick the alternative option. And I think Benjamin Sesko is just the cheaper option. It's not a better option. And I've seen both play many times. I know people say, oh, how much Portuguese league do you watch? You don't have to watch the Portuguese league, or you don't have to watch the German league all the time to see how good players are. I've seen Leipzig play Sporting in the Champions League this season. Both of them play against each other, and I've seen them in separate different games. And I think Gyokeres is a much better option. I think Gyokeres is the kind of striker that you sign for Arsenal and you think that's a signing that takes you to the title. I don't think that's the same with Benjamin Sesko. So unless we're signing Benjamin Sesko and then later in the window bringing in Rodrigo from Real Madrid, I don't know how much hope I'm going to have for next season.
Listen, I hear where you're coming from. Viewers, give us your thoughts on what London's Finest has said here. Man, always a pleasure to speak, mate. And we'll chat again soon. Next on the show, we have David. David is a Liverpool fan. What do you want to say, David?
Yeah, Terry. I'm just going to speak about things from an Arsenal perspective.
Go for it, mate.
Thinking about the signings that we're going to make, right? First of all, I was thinking they were going to get Gyokeres, right, instead of Sesko. And from a Liverpool fan point of view, I was getting scared. You know, I was thinking they're going to get Gyokeres, they're going to get Rodrigo, but now they're linked with Kudus and they're about to get Benjamin Sesko. I thought they were really going to bring things to the table and try and challenge them for the league and the Champions League. So, what's your thought on that? Do you think they need to actually go for more players that can actually deliver something? Don't you think, rather than all these projects?
The only issue I have is that I don't necessarily think Kudus and Williams are projects. I think they're excellent players. I think they're very, very good indeed. They just need the platform to be able to show it. There's always a risk. But just like with yourselves dropping, 150 million euros potentially on Wirtz, like we've seen deals like that go wrong before as well. You've got to take that risk. He's still young. He's killing it, but he's still young. Yeah. Šeško is an excellent player. Decent amount of goals this year for a team that barely creates. So you've got to factor that into the situation as well. However, I still think they're better off getting Gyokeres over Benjamin Sesko. I absolutely do. Definitely. But I'm not in the sort of the place of thinking that the alternatives that Arsenal are looking at are rubbish. I think the players they're looking at as well are also very good. So that's just me as a right. I'm not looking at going, they're getting Sesko. That's I don't think it's not like they're signing Rasmus Højlund, you know?
Yeah, one thing I would say is that Kudus will suit them very much because he's more of a maverick player. He's a player, he's suited to the Premier League. He would just do whatever it takes. He kind of has that brain like Rodrigo, where he'll just take on players and shoot. So he'll probably have a good platform there with in Arsenal. But if they get someone like Nico Williams, who he's okay, but the problem with him is his end product. I think his end product hasn't been. He's I've watched him at Atletico Bilbao because that's the team I like in Spain, right? But the problem with him is that he'll do everything correctly until the final, last pass or to actually shoot. But the funny thing is that he plays very well for Spain, but in club football he's a bit inconsistent. So I'll be worried. If I was an Arsenal fan, I'll be worried about that.
Okay. Listen, thank you very much for the call, David. We appreciate it. You coming on. Thank you, bro. Next up, we have Zach on the line. What are you saying, Zach?
Terry, can you hear me all good?
I can. What do you want to say, bro?
I feel like I'm an Arsenal fan. I feel like this season is a win-win no matter what. Because I feel like, because there's Arteta hours and Arteta is, I feel like it's either he succeeds, get another season, or he fails and he gets sacked. Like, it's either we win a major trophy or we get a new manager. Like, I feel like that's a win-win no matter what. Is it not? Like, because at some point we have to progress, and winning a trophy is great, or we don't win a trophy and we get a new manager that's hopefully better. Like,
yeah, I mean, because I'm not emotionally connected to Arsenal, I see it very much through that lens. I see this as you've got a team that's very close to winning. I think you're linked to very good players. If you get them and you don't win again, you just bring in a better coach who then maybe gets you over the line. I heard an Arsenal fan say, I don't know what stream it was, but I was listening to a bit of content yesterday. It might have actually been Lee Judges who said this. Let me quote what Lee Judges said. And I just feel, again, I'm not emotionally connected. So you're allowed to feel how you want as a gooner. But this is what was said. This is what he said. it's kind of yeah, this is what he said. It's going to be massive, a big call for Arsenal to make between Gyokeres and Šeško, because it's kind of that make or break for the football club.
Yep.
And that makes it sound like if they get it wrong, that's it forever. I don't think it's as serious as that. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not playing it down like the season's not important. Of course it is. But I'm hearing Arsenal fans talk like if we get this wrong, we're done forever. So you're not. It's like there's like a melodramatic nature about it. And to keep the same energy, the Man United fans that were saying when we lost the Europa League, we're done forever. We're never buying another player again. I don't know how
you guys are buying players. That's crazy. Like, where's this money coming from? You bought Cunha. You linked with Mbeumo. Who else are you linked with? You bought someone else, haven't you?
Yeah, well, we've got the money because the new ownership.
Is that just because of
stopped
United being massive?
Imagine this, right? Imagine you earn $5,000. You sound Australian to me. You earn $5,000 a month. Okay, you earn $5,000 a month, but you're spending $6,000 a month, and you're in debt, and you've got no money. And you go and see your friends, and you go, "Guys, I can't come out for a little while. I'm losing £1,000 a month. I'm in trouble." And then a year later, your friends see you. Oh, how can you afford that new car you just bought? Well, I stopped overspending for 12 months. I was only spending $2,500 a month, and I was saving $2,500 a month. Now I've got money for a car. That's all that's happened. But the problem is that the media weren't telling the truth, as they were telling part.
I don't know why they did that.
Does that make sense? So we went from losing 70 to 80 million pound a quarter to making profits last year, but no one wanted to talk about it because it was potentially deemed as a good news story. And yes, there was the redundancies that have helped in that, which were horrible, but everybody focused on the wrong evil entity. The evil entity wasn't the people that made the redundancies. It was the scumbags who wrongfully employed people in the first place when we didn't have the money for it. So for me, I'm not surprised we're spending some money because I was just looking at the facts.
So what's cost the 80 million a quarter? Was that just staff and stadium and all that?
Well, it's a number of things. So one of the biggest things was this: Man United, over a period of say 2 to 3 years, increased our revenues by around £100 million through getting back to Champions League in Europe, winning some trophies, new sponsors. Great. What we did though, through players and normal day-to-day staff, is we increased our outgoings by 200 million.
Oh, gotcha.
So if over a 3-year period, your turnover, again, like you, if you get a pay rise tomorrow, you're now earning $6,000 a month, but you increase your spending to $8,000 a month. Doesn't matter how much money you earn, you're fucked. Do you know what I mean? You've got to spend within your means. And Man United, we were overstaffed, over-resourced, wasted money on recruitment of players. We had staff at the club doing crazy jobs. We were one of the only clubs in England giving out free food to over 1,000 people a day. Even right down to little things. So the maintenance department at the football club, they found lockups in the club with materials in wood and metals and sort of hardware worth hundreds of thousands of pounds that wasn't being used or needed. It was just over-resourcing, And people are like, oh, United accounting screws. Well, yes, because if every department of the club overspends, we lose money. It's for me, I didn't understand why people were angry about it. It's like any home or any business, large or small, you can't spend more money than you make. You go out of business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like every club does that though, do they not? Like, do they not count everything down and account stuff?
They do, but what happens is this, right? So it's an English thing here, and it's because of, I think, of the centuries that we have, you go right back to the 1300s or wherever it is with the 14th century with the peasants' revolt. We have this thing about, as workers, we should always be respected, and we should be. But you know that there's I'm working class, right? I'm a povo, so I can speak about the other povos. We do this as working class people in England. And I used to have friends like it, and I had staff like it. You should be grateful I've turned up for work, and I'm here to help your business run. No. That's what I pay. I shouldn't be grateful that you've turned up to get paid to do a job. Like, I'll act grateful and I'll be respectful. But we have millions of people in England that think, well, I'm an employee, I'm the most important person here. You've been given a job, you get given a salary, you get given benefits, you get given holiday time that's paid, you come in and do 8 hours a day work, and you work hard and then you go home. We have staff members that are offended in England this day and age if you ask them to work hard, if you ask them to not be late, if you complain about them taking too long at lunch. And that mentality is the issue when it comes to Man United fixing its problems. It's like, well, you can't stop people from having jobs. Well, if the job isn't needed, you can. It's not nice. I'm not celebrating it. I'm actually more focused on the Glazers and all those scumbags who hired people we didn't need. You've created this issue. But we have a weird thing in England that people treat businesses like they're charities. And it's crazy. I run businesses. I'm not going to employ people that I can't afford to pay. That's crazy. Just say it out loud. Are you a good or bad person for employing people you can't afford to pay?
Pretty bad.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It really is crazy.
Also, with the Gyokeres Sesko, I think just both players are great. Like, I feel like both have strengths, both have weaknesses, and we'll just hope whoever we get is useful for us and gets 20 goals a season. Like,
yeah, he very much could do it, Zach. Listen, bro, it's been a pleasure talking, my friend. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it massively. Thank you. We are at the end of the show now. Like I say, listen, I'm a working class person. I respect how hard the majority of the workforce in the UK works, but there is a percentage, and I think it's a small percentage, but there is a percentage who, and I've worked with them, I'm friends with some of them, they just think the world owes them a living. I'm just thinking back to conversations I used to have when I worked at the bank. I always remember this one fella, been working in the bank 10 years, and I had to discipline him because he was late 3 mornings running. And he actually said it it wasn't deadpan, it was real. He just said, I don't get why you or the bank would be angry with me being late. Like, if people like me didn't turn up, you wouldn't be able to open anyway. I'm sitting there thinking, now, if you didn't turn up, we'd sack you. And we'd bring in somebody else who wanted a job. It really felt like, well, we're the reason that we operate here. Yeah, you are, because we pay you. You're not a volunteer. But there we go. Listen, I want to thank every single person that has tuned in. Please hit the like button. Please make sure you're subscribing to the Football Terrace. We're back later with more content for you. Take care. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you all again soon. Peace.